Chapter 1. Chains in the Marketplace. The sun of Altheria hung high and merciless, a molten disk in the cloudless sky, pouring heat over the capital city until its marble streets seemed to shimmer. Heat waves rose from the white stone colonnades, gilded domes gleamed painfully bright, and the cry of hawkers selling their wares carried through every narrow alley and sprawling square. But the slave market was different. Here, laughter was not joyful but cruel, sharp, and cutting. The air smelled not of roasted lamb or fragrant cinnamon, but of sweat, fear, and the metallic tang of rusted chains. It was a place where dignity came to die, and hope was bartered like coin. Leora stood among the others, wrists bound by iron shackles that had bitten so long into her flesh they had left deep red grooves. The iron was hot beneath the sun, and every movement made her wince. Yet she kept her head high. She would not bow to them, no matter how they stripped her bare of comfort or pride. The auctioneer, a thick-necked man with a booming voice, strutted across the wooden platform. He clapped his hands for attention, his gold rings glinting in the sunlight. "Step forward, girl," he barked. Leora did not move fast enough for his liking. With a scowl, he seized her arm and yanked her forward, displaying her like a merchant would show a mule's teeth. The crowd pressed closer, eyes greedy, voices calling out assessments as though she could not hear. "Strong shoulders," one man muttered. "Pretty face, though too proud by half," another chuckled. "Not broken enough for good service," a woman sneered. Leora's jaw clenched. She stared out at them with dark, storm-filled eyes, unflinching. She thought of her home, of the valley of Darren, green with orchards and wild flowers, where her father had once taught her how to ride, and her mother's songs had filled the kitchen. All of it had burned when the raiders came. She remembered the smoke, the screams, the steel pressed against her throat. She remembered chains clamping shut around her wrists for the first time. Her breath caught. She swallowed hard. 200, a voice called from the crowd. The auctioneer's eyes lit up. 200. Who bids higher for this fine young woman, useful for work and other entertainments? The crowd laughed crudely. Leora's cheeks flushed, not with shame, but with rage. 220, 250, 300. The auctioneer beamed. "Now we have a contest. 300 to the gentleman with the red scarf. Who will give me more?" The bidders squabbled among themselves, voices rising. But then another voice cut through, calm, commanding, and unmistakably authoritative. 500. The crowd fell silent. Heads turned, and the sea of bodies parted as a figure approached. He was tall, his frame straight and imposing beneath a cloak of deep sapphire trimmed with silver. Sunlight caught on the hilt of the sword at his hip, its pommel engraved with the sigil of a falcon in flight. His dark hair was neatly tied back, his features sharp, but it was his eyes that silenced even the boldest hecklers. Storm gray, cool and steady, as though he could see straight through lies and masks. The auctioneer faltered. 500, paid in full, the man said, his tone brooking no dispute. No one dared to counter. Even the boldest bidders averted their eyes. The auctioneer cleared his throat nervously and fumbled with the keys at his belt. Very well, my lord, she is yours." The chains were unlocked. For the first time in months, Leora felt the cold weight lift from her wrists. The iron clattered to the ground, leaving behind bruised skin and a faint ache that seemed to linger in her bones. Her knees wavered, weak from hunger and exhaustion. She stumbled, nearly falling to the ground, until a firm hand caught her by the elbow. She looked up. The man's hand was strong, but his touch was gentle, steadying her rather than restraining. His gaze met hers, and for a moment the noise of the market faded. His eyes held no mockery, no lust, no disdain, only something she could not quite name. "You are safe now," he said softly. Leora blinked, disbelieving. "Safe?" Her voice was hoarse from disuse, cracked like dry earth. "Yes." She pulled her arm from his grasp, glaring. "Why? Why would you buy me?" The faintest curve of a smile touched his lips, not cruel, but knowing. "Because some chains are meant to be broken." Her heart skipped. She did not trust him. How could she trust any man who walked into a slave market with coin to spare? Yet his words, they did not sound like the others. The auctioneer shuffled closer, bowing low. "Thank you, my lord. Thank you for your generosity. Might I inquire if you would—" The man cut him off with a glance sharp enough to slice stone. The auctioneer fell silent. Turning back to Leora, the stranger straightened. "Come, you will not remain here." Leora hesitated. Around them, the crowd had begun to disperse, muttering in hushed tones. She caught snatches of words: prince, royal, dangerous to cross. Her eyes widened. "Prince!" The man led her through the marketplace, the crowd parting instinctively. Soldiers in silver armor flanked him discreetly, keeping watch, though none dared approach too close. Leora walked in silence beside him, her wrists burning with phantom chains, her mind racing. She had been bought, but not like before. She had not been dragged by her hair or shoved into a cart. She walked freely, though not of her own will entirely. Finally she spoke, her voice low. "You are a prince?" "Yes." "Why me?" she demanded. "You could have bought anyone. Why waste so much coin on a stranger?" He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Because you are not meant to be here." Leora frowned. "And what am I meant to be?" His lips curved again, just slightly. "That we shall see." The palace walls loomed in the distance, their white marble gleaming in the sunlight, their towers crowned with banners of silver and blue. For the first time since her capture, Leora felt something stir in her chest. Not hope, not yet, but a trembling thread of possibility. She did not know the man's name. She did not know what fate awaited her in the halls of the palace. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Her life had just changed forever. Chapter 2: A Stranger's Protection. The palace of Altheria was unlike anything Leora had ever seen. Its white marble walls rose high into the sky, polished so smoothly they gleamed like glass beneath the afternoon sun. Silver banners embroidered with falcons rippled in the warm breeze, casting long shadows upon courtyards paved with mosaic tiles. Fountains danced in perfect arcs, their waters catching the light in crystal droplets that glittered like falling stars. But beyond its beauty, the palace reeked of power. It was in the measured steps of the guards who flanked the gates, in the way servants lowered their eyes when the sapphire-cloaked prince strode past, and in the weight of silence that followed him wherever he went. Leora walked half a step behind him, barefoot on the hot stones. She clutched her thin shawl around her shoulders, painfully aware of how out of place she looked among silk-draped courtiers and armored guards. Every glance burned against her skin, some curious, some hostile, most dismissive. At the threshold of the great hall, she stopped. Her voice was quiet, but sharp. "I cannot go in there." The prince turned. His storm-grey eyes studied her, unreadable. "Why not?" She lifted her chin. "Because I do not belong here. I am not one of you." For a heartbeat, his expression softened, almost imperceptibly. Then he spoke with calm certainty. "You belong where you are safe, and you will be safe here as long as you are under my protection." His words struck her in an odd way. She wanted to scoff, to remind him that chains had not been broken by kindness before. And yet she had seen his eyes in the marketplace, had felt the steadiness of his hand when she stumbled. Something in her chest wavered, but she said nothing. The prince led her through the towering doors into the grand hall. Gold and silver lined the arched ceilings, and a crimson carpet stretched the length of the room like a river of blood. Nobles clustered in groups, whispering behind jeweled fans and feathered hats, their eyes darting to the barefoot girl trailing behind their prince. Leora felt their stares like knives. A woman in a gown of emerald silk stepped forward, her lips curved in a poisonous smile. "Your Highness," she said smoothly, bowing her head just enough to be polite. "What an unusual guest you bring to the palace today." The prince's reply was clipped. "Lady Elira, your eyes are as sharp as ever, and yours, it seems, have grown peculiar tastes." Her gaze slid toward Leora, raking over her as though she were filth on a shoe. "Wherever did you find her?" Leora's hands curled into fists, but she held her tongue. The prince's voice hardened, low and dangerous. "That is none of your concern." Lady Elira flinched, then quickly recovered her smile. "Of course, my lord. Forgive my curiosity." With a final poisonous glance at Leora, she withdrew. Leora's heart pounded. The weight of so many eyes suffocated her. When the prince finally led her through a side corridor, away from the hall, she exhaled shakily. "Why bring me here?" she demanded once they were alone. "You knew they would stare, whisper, 'I am nothing but a slave to them.'" He stopped at the base of a marble staircase and turned to face her fully. His gaze held hers, steady and unflinching. "You are not a slave." The words struck her harder than she expected. Her throat tightened. "Then what am I?" His lips curved faintly. "A guest." She laughed bitterly. "A guest? I have no name, no family, no freedom. Guests can leave, can I?" He did not answer at once. Instead, he began climbing the stairs. "Come, you must eat and rest. The rest we will discuss when you have strength." Leora hesitated, torn between anger and confusion, but her hunger gnawed too deeply to resist. She followed. The prince's chambers were vast, with high-arched windows that flooded the room with light. Velvet curtains cascaded from gilded rods, and intricate carpets softened the floor. To Leora, who had slept on straw and stone, it was a different world entirely. A long table had been set with food, roasted meats, fresh bread, honeyed figs, and pitchers of cool water. The scents made her stomach clench painfully. The prince gestured toward the table. "Eat." She did not move. "Why are you doing this?" His gaze lingered on her. "Eat, Leora." Her eyes widened. You know my name?" "I make it my business to know many things," he said almost lightly. "Now eat." Her pride warred with her hunger, but at last, trembling, she sat and reached for a piece of bread. The first bite brought tears to her eyes. She had not tasted soft bread since her father's kitchen before the raids. She ate quickly, almost desperately, until she realized the prince was watching. She froze, swallowing hard. "Do you enjoy staring at your Guest? She asked, her voice sharp. A shadow of amusement flickered across his features. I am ensuring you do not faint again. Heat rose to her cheeks. She forced herself to slow, though her hunger still clawed at her. When she had eaten enough to ease the ache, she leaned back, wiping her lips with the edge of her shawl. You know my name, then you must also know my past. The prince's expression grew serious. He moved to the window, staring out across the city. I know only fragments, that your home was Darren, that raiders took it by fire, that you were lost and sold. Leora's chest tightened. Then you know enough. He turned back, his gaze piercing. I know enough to understand that you are not what they called you in the market. You are more. Her heart gave a painful twist. And yet you bought me. Silence hung heavy between them. At last, he said quietly, yes, I did, because if I had not, someone else would have, and they would not have freed you. The word struck her like a blade of light through storm clouds. Freed, she shook her head. You speak of freedom, yet here I am, in your palace. How is this different? His jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. Because here, no one will harm you. Because here, you may choose your own steps. Within these walls, that is more than the market would grant you. Her breath came uneven. Part of her wanted to believe him. Part of her wanted to scream. Instead, she whispered, why me? His answer came after a pause, his voice lower, almost distant. Because I saw something in your eyes, something unbroken, and I know what it is to carry chains you cannot see. Leora stared at him, startled. For the first time she sensed a shadow behind his calm mask, a weight in his tone, a secret unspoken. But before she could ask, a knock came at the door. A guard entered, bowing. Your Highness, the council requests your presence. The prince's eyes darkened. He gave a curt nod. Tell them I will come shortly. The guard retreated. Leora rose from her chair. You are a prince. You cannot waste your time on me. His gaze softened, just slightly, but enough that she felt it. Perhaps you will learn that I do not waste time. He moved toward the door, pausing only once. Rest here. No one will disturb you. When I return, we will speak again. And then he was gone. Leora stood in the silence of the great chamber, her hands trembling at her sides. He was a stranger, and yet his words stirred something in her chest she had thought long dead. Safety, freedom, guest. She did not know if she could trust him, but for the first time since fire consumed her homeland, she felt the faintest flicker of something she had buried long ago. Hope. Chapter 3. Whispers in the Palace. The Palace of Altheria, for all its brilliance, was not built of marble and gold alone. It was built of secrets. Leora learned this within days of her arrival. From her chamber balcony she could see the courtyards where noblemen paraded their peacocks and hounds, their laughter sharp as knives. She could hear the hushed voices of maids exchanging gossip while they polished silver and folded silks, and she could feel, with every step she took beyond the safety of her rooms, the weight of eyes that lingered on her. It was not only curiosity, it was suspicion. The first whispers reached her in the women's wing when she strayed too far while exploring. Two noble ladies in pale blue gowns stood by a fountain, their jeweled fans fluttering like wings of butterflies. They did not see her at first. Brought her from the market of all places, one said, her voice dripping with scorn. A slave. the other murmured. In the prince's wing? Can you imagine? What must he be thinking? Leora froze, pressing herself against the cool stone wall. Thinking? The first laughed. Oh, I can imagine well enough. Men are simple creatures. He saved her because she is pretty. That is all. The second sighed. And yet, she has the eyes of a noble. Have you noticed? Perhaps there is more to her. Hush. Do not let such thoughts escape your lips. If she is nothing, she will vanish soon enough. If she is something, then she is dangerous. Their voices faded as they walked away, their skirts whispering over the marble. Leora leaned against the wall, her heart hammering. Dangerous. That word burned. She had not asked to be brought here. She had not asked to be seen. When she returned to her chamber, she closed the door and pressed her palms to her eyes. The palace was not safe. She might have escaped one set of chains, but another had already been fastened around her neck. The suspicion of nobles, the whispers of those who thought themselves her betters. And yet, one thought would not leave her. She has the eyes of a noble. That evening, Kaelan returned. She had not seen him since the council had summoned him the day before. When he entered her chamber, she was sitting by the window, staring out over the gardens where fireflies had begun to glow like drifting lanterns. You are restless, he observed, closing the door behind him. Leora did not turn. Your palace is a nest of serpents? Did you think I would not notice the hissing? His brow arched slightly, though his expression remained calm. And what have you heard? Enough to know that I am not welcome here. She finally turned, her eyes flashing. They call me a slave. They call me dangerous. And perhaps they are right. You should have left me in the market. Kaelan's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, his presence filling the room. Do not say that. I will not hear it. Her breath caught. The firmness of his voice struck her like a blade against stone. You think you did me a kindness, she whispered, but you have dragged me into a place where every glance cuts like a knife. Why? Why take me from one prison to place me in another? For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then Kaelan exhaled slowly and sat upon the edge of the table, his hands clasped. You see only half the truth, he said. Yes, the nobles whisper. Yes, they will try to wound you with words. But that is not the prison. The prison is believing them. Leora frowned. His eyes softened, storm gray, darkened by something deeper. I know what it is to walk these halls and feel the whispers like arrows in your back. I know what it is to be doubted, mistrusted, and watched. You're not alone in that. She studied him, startled. For the first time he seemed less like an untouchable prince and more like a man with wounds of his own. But before she could speak, there was another knock at the door. A guard entered, bowing. Your Highness, Lord Reynold requests your presence in the East Gallery. Kaelan's mouth tightened. My cousin wastes no time. Leora tilted her head. Your cousin? The prince rose. You will meet him soon enough. Until then, stay here. Do not wander alone. His gaze sharpened. Promise me. Something in his tone made her chest twist. She nodded reluctantly. I promise. But Leora did not keep her promise. That night, unable to sleep, she slipped from her chamber. The palace was quiet, its halls lit by silver lanterns that cast soft shadows across the marble floors. She moved silently, her bare feet making no sound. She did not know where she was going, only that she needed air, needed to escape the suffocating sense of being watched. She found herself in a long corridor lined with statues of falcons, their wings spread wide in frozen flight. Beyond the corridor lay a smaller gallery, its walls hung with tapestries of Altheria's victories in battle. She lingered there, tracing the woven images with her eyes. That was when she heard voices. She pressed herself into the shadows, her heart pounding. Bringing her here was a mistake, a man's voice said, smooth, cultured, with a note of disdain. Another voice, lower, hesitant. But she is only a girl. What danger could she pose? The first voice chuckled. A girl? Yes, but the prince's girl, and that makes her a weapon. Do you not see? He parades her before us, as though daring us to question him. And question him we shall? Leora's blood ran cold. She will be his downfall. The man continued, mark my words, and when that day comes, the throne will pass where it should have long ago. Footsteps echoed closer. Leora held her breath, pressing herself against the tapestry. The men passed, their cloaks brushing the floor, their faces hidden by the shadows of the lantern light. But one word seared into her mind, throne. When Cailan returned later that night, he found Leora pacing her chamber, her face pale but her eyes alight with urgency. You must tell me the truth, she demanded before he could speak. Why did you bring me here? What game is being played in your court? Who is your cousin? And why does he speak of your throne? Cailan froze. Slowly he closed the door behind him. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, were filled with shadows. You should not have wandered, he said quietly. Leora lifted her chin. I did, and I heard enough to know that you are not safe, that we are not safe. For a long moment, Cailan studied her, as though weighing whether to reveal the truth. Then he crossed the room, standing close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. My cousin, Lord Reynold, believes the throne should be his. He has long sought reasons to undermine me. By bringing you here, I gave him one. Leora's breath caught. Then why? Because I would not leave you there. His voice was fierce, raw. Even if it costs me everything, her heart pounded, shaken by the force of his words. She stared at him, searching his face for any hint of falsehood. There was none. For the first time she understood. This was no simple kindness. This was a choice that could change the fate of a kingdom, and she was at the center of it. Chapter 4: Secrets of the Past. The next morning dawned with golden light spilling across the palace gardens. Birds trilled in the olive trees, and the fountains glimmered in the sun. Yet Leora woke with a restless weight in her chest. Sleep had been fitful. She had dreamed of fire, her village burning, her father's voice calling her name as soldiers dragged her away. But when she reached for him, only smoke filled her hands. She sat by the window, hugging her knees, watching servants bustle below. The palace was alive with preparation, maids carrying bolts of silk, cooks shouting orders, guards tightening drills in the courtyard. Something was coming. A knock at her chamber door startled her. When she opened it, a young maid stood there, clutching a bundle of folded clothes. His Highness requests you wear this. the maid said softly, bowing before placing the bundle on the bed. Leora unwrapped it to find a gown of pale blue linen, simple compared to the jeweled splendor she had seen on the noble women, but finer than anything she had worn since before her capture. The fabric was soft, the stitching delicate, the neckline modest yet elegant. She frowned. Why? The maid hesitated. You are to attend the prince at the council chamber today. Leora's breath caught. The council? The girl nodded. His command. When the maid left, Leora stared at the gown for a long time before finally slipping it on. It fit too well, almost as if it had been tailored for her. Her reflection in the polished bronze mirror startled her. No longer the ragged girl in chains, but someone she barely recognized, someone who might pass as noble. But the moment she stepped into the corridors, the stairs began again. Servants paused mid-step, guards exchanged glances, and whispers followed her like shadows. By the time she reached the council chamber, her nerves burned. The chamber doors opened with a heavy creak. Inside, a long table stretched beneath stained glass windows that painted the marble floor in colors of crimson, gold, and green. Around the table sat Altheria's council, lords and ladies draped in silks, their faces sharp with politics. At the head of the table stood Cailan. He looked every inch the prince now, cloaked in deep blue, his falcon sigil gleaming on his chest, his presence commanding. When Leora entered, the whispers grew louder. "What is this?" muttered one grey-bearded lord. "A slave in the council chamber?" hissed another. "She dares to wear our colors," Lady Elira said, her voice dripping venom. Cailan raised his hand. Instantly, silence fell. His eyes swept the room, then landed on Leora. He gestured to the chair beside him. "Sit," he said. Leora's heart hammered, but she moved forward, every step echoing. She sat, folding her hands tightly in her lap, trying not to wilt under the weight of so many hostile stares. Cailan's voice carried through the chamber. "You all know why we gather. Tensions with the northern provinces grow. Grain stores run thin, and yet, while our people suffer, you concern yourselves with whispers and shadows." Lord Reynold, seated opposite, leaned back in his chair with an elegant smile. His hair was golden like sunlight, his features striking, his charm effortless, but his eyes, green and cold, gleamed with calculation. "My cousin," Reynold drawled, "it is hardly a whisper to question why you parade a market girl into our sacred council. We advise on matters of state, not on your indulgences." A ripple of laughter spread among the council. Leora's cheeks burned, but she lifted her chin. Her eyes met Reynold's, defiant. Cailan's jaw tightened. "Enough. Leora is not your concern." Reynold's smile widened. "On the contrary, she is very much our concern. Every noble in this room has heard the rumors. Some say she is merely a slave you fancy. Others, that she is of blood you would rather keep hidden." The chamber stirred. Leora froze. "Her blood?" Cailan's gaze darkened, but before he could reply, an elderly councillor spoke, Lord Halric, whose beard was white as snow, and whose eyes, unlike the others, were kind. "I have looked at the girl," Halric said slowly, "and I see not merely a slave. Look at her face, the eyes, the bearing. There is Darren in her." Gasps echoed around the chamber. Leora's breath caught. "Darren?" Halric nodded gravely. "I fought in Darren 20 years ago. I knew its lords and ladies, and I would swear by my honor that you carry their blood." The world seemed to tilt. Leora's memories flooded back. The orchard, her father's laughter, the crest carved into their hearth, a silver hawk on a green field. She had never understood its meaning, only that her father spoke little of his lineage. Her voice trembled. My father, he was no mere farmer, was he? Halrich's gaze softened. No, child, he was Lord Rinald of Durenne. You are his daughter. The chamber erupted in voices, some shocked, some angry. A noble bloodline. Impossible! She was sold like cattle. If true, then she is heir to lands long left in ruin. Leora's chest heaved. She turned to Cailan, whose face was unreadable. You knew. His eyes met hers, steady. I suspected. Her heart clenched. Why did you not tell me? Because I wanted you to remember who you were, he said softly. Not because I told you, but because you chose to claim it. Tears burned her eyes. She rose abruptly from her chair, unable to breathe in the choking chamber. The council's voices clashed like swords behind her as she fled. She found refuge in the palace gardens, beneath the shade of an ancient cypress. Her hands shook as she pressed them against her knees. Daughter of Lord Rinald, noble blood, heir to Durenne. It felt impossible. She had thought herself nothing but ashes, a girl broken and sold. Now the past opened like a wound. You ran. Cailan's voice came from behind. He stood a few steps away, his cloak stirring in the breeze. Leora's throat tightened. You should have told me. I could not, he said quietly. If I had spoken it, it would have been a chain around your neck. You had to find the strength yourself. Her eyes blazed. Strength? Do you not see what this means? They will use me. They already whisper. Your cousin, he will seize upon this to strike at you. Cailan stepped closer. Yes, Reynold will use it. He already has. But you are not his pawn, Leora. You are not anyone's pawn. Her breath trembled. Then what am I? He stopped before her, his storm-grey eyes burning with intensity. You are the daughter of a noble house. You are a survivor, and whether you choose to embrace that or not, you are more than what they tried to make of you. Leora's heart pounded. His words wrapped around her like fire, melting the ice of fear that had clung for so long. But still, a question burned. Why do you care so much? His gaze softened, and for a moment, something unguarded flickered across his face. Because I know what it is to be used, to be doubted, to carry a legacy you did not ask for. She stared at him, realization dawning. Your crown. He inclined his head just slightly. My crown. The silence between them was heavy, but not empty. It was filled with something unspoken, something fragile and burning. At last, Leora whispered, if I am who they say, if I truly am of Durenne, what will you do with me? Cailan's answer was quiet, but it struck her like thunder. I will protect you, whatever it costs. Chapter 5. The Betrayal. The revelation of Leora's lineage spread through the palace like wildfire. By the next morning, every corridor hummed with gossip. Servants whispered as she passed, bowing clumsily, unsure whether to treat her as a noble or an intruder. Courtiers regarded her with narrowed eyes, some with suspicion, others with hunger, calculating what her bloodline might be worth to them. Leora felt their stares like chains heavier than the iron she had once worn. In the gardens, she overheard guards murmuring, "Daughter of Durenne, imagine that. Reynold will never allow it. He'll see her as a threat or an opportunity." The words left her uneasy. Reynold's name came more and more frequently, always whispered, never spoken freely. That evening, Cailan summoned her to the library, a vast chamber lined with towering shelves, the air scented of parchment and cedar. The firelight cast shadows across his face as he studied a map spread over the table. "You should not wander alone," he said without looking up. Leora folded her arms. "I cannot live caged, even in a palace." His eyes lifted, gray and steady. "It is not a cage. It is a shield, and you are the one they aim their arrows at." She stepped closer, frustration tight in her chest. "Then tell me plainly, what do they want of me?" Callan's jaw clenched. He placed his hand flat against the map. Daren was once powerful. Fertile lands, strong trade routes, loyal vassals. When it fell, its nobles scattered. If you claim your bloodline, you could rally them again. And if Reynold holds you, Leora's breath caught, he could use me to take the throne. Callan nodded grimly. Silence stretched, heavy as the storm before rain. "At last," Leora whispered, "then perhaps I should leave, if I am the cause of this danger." "No!" His voice was sharp, fierce. "Do not speak of leaving. That is what he wants. If you vanish, he will hunt you, and you will be alone." Her heart trembled at the raw urgency in his tone, but before she could answer, the doors slammed open. A guard stumbled in, blood on his sleeve. "Your Highness, the Western Wing. It's under attack." Callan was on his feet instantly, his hand on his sword. "By whom?" The guard's face was pale. "Lord Reynold's men." Leora's blood ran cold. Callan's eyes met hers. "Stay here. Do not move until I return." But before she could protest, he was gone. The library fell into silence, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Leora's heart thundered. She paced, torn between fear and fury. Stay hidden while Callan fought alone? Then she heard it, the scrape of steel, the creak of the door. She spun and her breath caught. Lord Reynold stepped inside, his golden hair gleaming in the firelight, his smile sharp as a blade. Behind him trailed two guards with drawn swords. "Well," he drawled, his eyes sliding over her. "The little falcon herself, alone at last." Leora's fists clenched. "You dare?" "I dare much," Reynold interrupted smoothly. "Why not? My cousin is distracted, his men scattered, and here you stand, ripe for the taking." He stepped closer, his green eyes glinting with cruelty. "Do you know what you are, Leora of Daren? You are a key to lands, to power, to a crown, and keys belong to the one who wields them best." Leora's stomach twisted. "I will never be yours," Reynold chuckled, low and mocking. "You think you have a choice, poor girl? Choices are for those with strength. You have none." Leora's heart pounded, but she lifted her chin, defiant. "I have enough to say no." His smile faltered. A flash of anger crossed his face. "So stubborn, just like your father. And we all remember what became of him." Her breath caught. "You knew him?" "Oh yes," Reynold said softly. "I knew how he fought, how he begged, how he burned. Daren was a lesson, one my cousin forgets, but I do not." Rage ignited in her chest. "Monster!" Reynold stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Call me what you like. Soon the council will bow to me. And you, little falcon, will kneel at my side, or you will not live to see the dawn." Leora's blood ran cold, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "Better chains in death than a crown beside you." His eyes narrowed dangerously. He reached for her arm, but the doors burst open. Callan stormed in, his sword gleaming, his cloak torn and spattered with dust. His men followed, their armor dented but their eyes burning with fury. "Unhand her!" Reynold froze, then smiled mockingly, releasing her arm with deliberate slowness. "Cousin, how convenient that you arrive just in time to accuse me of What? Speaking with a guest? Kaelin's blade lifted, silver flashing in the firelight. You entered my chambers with armed men. You dare call it a visit? Reynolds' eyes glittered. Be careful, cousin. The council watches. Every move you make is weighed. Strike me down, and they will say you are a tyrant. Kaelin stepped closer, his voice like steel. Touch her again, and no counsel in the world will save you. For a moment, the room hung on the edge of bloodshed. Then Reynolds chuckled, motioning for his men to lower their blades. As you wish, he said smoothly. I withdraw. For now. He glanced at Leora one last time, his smile like poison. But remember, little falcon, a cage of gold is still a cage. When the day comes, you will see where your true freedom lies. With that, he swept out of the chamber, his men at his heels. Silence fell. Leora's knees trembled, and she sank into the nearest chair. Kaelin sheathed his sword and crossed to her side, his hand steady on her shoulder. Did he harm you? Her breath shook. Only with words, but they cut deep enough. Kaelin's eyes burned with fury. I should end this now. I should drag him before the council and expose his treachery. Leora shook her head. He is cunning. He will twist it. He already has the council's ear. Kaelin's jaw tightened. Then we must be cleverer still. She looked up at him, her heart aching. You risked everything to save me from the market, and now you risk your crown. His gaze softened. What use is a crown if I cannot choose whom I save? Her throat tightened, tears threatening. In that moment she saw the truth. He was not bound to her by duty, but by choice. And it was that choice Reynolds sought to destroy. She placed her hand over his, trembling. Then we fight together. Kaelin's eyes held hers, storm and fire entwined. Together. Chapter 6. Fire and Crown. The palace was restless in the days that followed Reynolds' intrusion. The council chamber buzzed with poisoned words. Servants moved faster, whispers trailing them like shadows. Guards patrolled with sharper eyes, their hands never straying far from their hilts. Leora could feel the storm gathering. Every smile at court hid a dagger. Every bow of courtesy masked suspicion. And always Reynolds' shadow lingered. At night, she dreamed of flames, her father's halls burning, chains clinking in the darkness. Kaelin's hand reaching for hers across an abyss she could never cross. On the third evening, the storm broke. Leora had been walking the torchlit corridors, restless when she heard it. The clash of steel, the echo of boots, the crackle of fire. She ran toward the sound, her heart thundering. As she rounded a corner, smoke billowed, shouts rose. Reynolds' men! Inside the palace! Protect the prince! Her blood turned to ice. She turned a corner and nearly collided with Kaelin. His sword was drawn, his face streaked with soot, his grey eyes blazing. Leora! Relief flickered across his face before urgency hardened it. You must hide. No, she said breathlessly. Not this time. I will not cower while you bleed for me. Kaelin's jaw tightened. For a heartbeat it seemed he would argue, but then he saw the fire in her eyes. Slowly he nodded. Then stay close. They moved together through the smoke-filled halls. Reynolds' men clashed with loyal guards, steel ringing against steel. Flames licked the wooden beams, shadows leaping like demons. They reached the grand hall, and there stood Reynolds, clad in black and gold, his sword gleaming, his eyes burning with triumph. His men held the high ground, driving Kaelin's loyalists back. When Reynolds saw them, his smile widened. "Cousin," he called, his voice echoing. How fitting that we end this here, in fire, as Duran ended. Kaelan stepped forward, blade raised. This is treason, Reynold. No, Reynolds said smoothly. This is destiny. The council grows weary of your mercy, your softness. They need a ruler of iron, and with her, his eyes flicked to Leora. They will kneel to me willingly. Leora's stomach twisted. She stepped forward, her voice ringing through the hall. You will never have me. Reynolds' smile faltered. Then rage twisted his face. Then you will burn with him. He lunged. Steel clashed. Kaelan met his cousin's blade, sparks flying. The hall erupted in battle. Men shouting, swords striking, flames roaring higher. Leora pressed herself against a pillar, heart racing, but her eyes never left Kaelan. He fought with the fury of a storm, every strike fueled by purpose. But Reynold was swift, cunning, his smile cruel even in combat. At last, Reynold fainted, his blade darting toward Kaelan's chest. Kaelan twisted, the strike grazing his shoulder, blood blooming crimson. No! Leora cried. Reynolds' laughter rang through the hall. See how he bleeds for you, little falcon? Will you let him die for a crown he does not even want? Something inside Leora snapped. She seized a fallen guard's dagger, her hands trembling, but her voice steady as she stepped forward. Reynold, she shouted. Both men turned. Her eyes blazed, her voice fierce. You speak of crowns, of power, of destiny, but you know nothing of them. My father ruled Duran, not with fear, but with loyalty. His people followed him because he earned their love. You will never know that, and that is why you will fall. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then Reynolds snarled and lunged toward her. Kaelan moved like lightning, intercepting him. Their blades clashed again, sparks flying. This time, Kaelan's fury drove him forward, his strength unyielding. With a final cry, he struck Reynolds' sword from his hand, sending it skittering across the floor. Reynolds stumbled back, eyes wide with disbelief. Kaelan's blade pressed to his throat. The hall fell silent. Flames crackled. Steel stilled. Reynolds' voice shook, but still he sneered. Kill me, cousin, and the council will call you butcher. Spare me, and I will rise again. Kaelan's jaw clenched, his blade trembling with the weight of choice. Then Leora stepped forward, her voice calm but unyielding. No, let him live, but let the council see him for what he is, a traitor who would set his own palace aflame for power. Reynolds' eyes flicked to her, venomous. You think mercy will save you? Leora met his gaze, steady. No, truth will. Kaelan's eyes met hers. Slowly he lowered his sword. Bind him, he ordered. His men surged forward, seizing Reynold, dragging him away in chains. His furious curses echoed as he was taken. When the hall was clear, silence settled. Kaelan leaned heavily on his sword, blood dripping from his shoulder. Leora rushed to him, her hands trembling as she touched his wound. You're hurt. He caught her wrist gently, his grey eyes soft despite the pain. It is nothing. Tears burned her eyes. You risked everything for me. He smiled faintly. For you and for us all. Her breath caught. She searched his face, the firelight dancing across his strong features, his eyes so raw and unguarded. Kaelan, she whispered. Before she could falter, his hand cupped her cheek, and his lips found hers. The kiss was fierce, desperate, filled with everything unspoken, the fear, the longing, the promise. The fire roared around them, but in that moment there was only them, two souls who had fought through chains, betrayal, and blood to find each other. When they parted, Her tears mingled with her smile. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Kaelin's gaze held hers, steady as stone. "Now we rebuild with truth. With you." Leora's heart trembled. "With me," he nodded. "You are Duren's heir. You are the key not to my throne, but to its salvation, and I would place no chain upon you, only a crown if you will take it." Her breath hitched. The words struck deep, filling her chest with both awe and terror. But she saw the truth in his eyes, the promise that this crown would not be a cage, but a bond forged in fire. Slowly she whispered, "Yes," and the flames around them seemed to bow, as if even the fire knew a new chapter had begun. Chapter 7. A Crown for the Slave Girl. The palace still smelled faintly of smoke. Charred beams had been carried from the halls, the marble floors scrubbed, the banners rehung, yet for all the scars the fire left, the heart of Altheria beat stronger than ever. The rebellion had been crushed. Reynold, stripped of his titles, stood in chains before the council. His voice, once smooth and commanding, was now bitter, spitting venom that no one listened to. His allies had fled or bent the knee, their plots exposed under torchlight. The council chamber was filled with murmurs when Kaelin entered, tall and grim, his bandaged shoulder hidden beneath his cloak. Behind him walked Leora, her gown simple white, her hair braided with silver threads the maids had insisted upon. Whispers followed her as always, but now they were different. Not scorn, not suspicion, something like awe. Reynold lifted his head when she entered, his green eyes flashing. "The falcon rises," he sneered. "How fitting that a slave girl replaces nobles in our halls." But Lord Halric's voice silenced him. "Not a slave, a daughter of Duren, and the one who saved this kingdom when you sought to burn it." The council murmured in agreement. Kaelin's gaze swept the chamber. "You see the truth of it. My cousin betrayed his blood, his king, his people. He will be judged, not by me alone, but by the laws he spat upon." Guards dragged Reynold away, his curses echoing down the corridor. For the first time since the night of fire, silence settled in the chamber without dread. Kaelin turned to the lords and ladies. "This council will be cleansed. No longer will shadows govern Altheria. From this day forward, truth will be its foundation." The lords bowed their heads, murmuring assent, but Kaelin's eyes were not on them. They were on her. That night, the great square of Altheria filled with people. Torches blazed, banners fluttered, the sound of drums thundered in the air. From the balconies of the palace, nobles leaned to watch. From the streets below, merchants, farmers, soldiers, and children gathered, their voices rising in a sea of expectation. They had heard the stories, the coup thwarted, the treachery revealed, the mysterious girl at the prince's side. Tonight they would see the truth for themselves. Leora stood in the shadows of the balcony, her hands trembling as she looked out over the crowd. She had never seen so many faces, so many eyes turned toward her. Her heart pounded. She remembered the market, the jeers, the groping hands, the auctioneer's cruel voice, and now here she stood, before a kingdom. Kaelin stepped beside her, his presence steady as stone. He wore his ceremonial cloak, deep blue with silver embroidery, the falcon sigil gleaming on his chest. He looked every inch a prince, But when his hand found hers, his touch was warm, human, grounding. "You are afraid," he murmured. She nodded, her breath shaky. "I was once nothing to them, less than nothing." "Not nothing," Kaelin said firmly. "Never nothing. You are Leora of Daren. You are the reason we stand here tonight. And if you doubt yourself, then take my strength as your own." Her throat tightened. "And if I fall?" His eyes softened. "Then I fall with you." Tears stung her eyes, but she drew a breath. The drums slowed, and the herald's voice rang out. "Behold, His Highness Prince Kaelin of Altheria!" The crowd roared. "And with him, Leora of Daren." The roar became thunder. Kaelin led her onto the balcony. The torches below flared, thousands of flames flickering like stars. The people's cheers rose to the heavens. Leora's breath caught. For a moment she was overwhelmed, but then she saw them, really saw them, the women in their shawls, the children on their fathers' shoulders, the old men leaning on canes, the soldiers with scarred faces, and in their eyes she saw not mockery, not scorn, hope. She straightened, lifting her chin. Kaelin raised his hand, and the crowd hushed. His voice carried, steady and strong. "My people, tonight you see with your own eyes what nearly destroyed us. Treachery was rooted out, a false brother unmasked. But it was not my blade alone that saved us. It was her courage, her truth." He turned, his grey eyes resting on Leora. "Once she was sold in chains. Once she was treated as less than you or I. Yet in her heart she carried the blood of Daren, the strength of a noble house, and the fire of freedom. She stood where even lords faltered, and it is because of her that Altheria stands unbroken." The crowd erupted in cheers, chanting her name. "Leora! Leora!" Her chest ached, tears burning her eyes. She had never imagined such a sound could exist. Kaelin stepped closer, his voice lower now, for her as much as for the kingdom. "Leora, you were taken from your home, stripped of your name, sold as though you were nothing. But tonight I would return to you what was stolen and offer more still." Her breath caught as he turned to the herald. The man stepped forward, carrying a crown, simple yet beautiful, wrought of silver and set with a single sapphire that caught the torchlight. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Kaelin took the crown in his hands. Then he knelt. Leora's heart stopped. Before all the kingdom, the prince knelt before the girl who had once stood on a slave block. His voice rang clear, steady, and full of unshakable truth. "Leora of Daren, you owe me nothing. I would bind you with no chains, no bargains, no duty. But I love you with all that I am, and before Altheria, I ask, will you walk beside me, not as my slave, not as my subject, but as my queen?" The world stilled. The torches seemed to burn brighter, the night holding its breath. Leora's tears spilled freely, her voice trembling but strong. "Kaelin, you saved me when I had nothing. You saw me when I was invisible. You gave me back not just my name but my heart. How could I do anything but say yes?" The crowd exploded, cheers rolling like thunder, voices crying her name, his name, their names together. Kaelin rose, his smile breaking through his solemnity, his eyes alight with joy. Gently he placed the crown upon her head. The sapphire gleamed in the torchlight, casting a blue glow across her dark hair. And in that moment, The girl who had once been sold in chains became queen. Kaelin kissed her then, not fierce, but tender, reverent, as if sealing a vow. The people roared, and bells rang out across Altheria. Leora closed her eyes, her hand tightening in his. The market chains, the fire, the fear, all were gone. In their place was love and freedom and a crown she would never wear as a burden, but as a promise she would keep beside him for as long as they both drew breath.